talk among yourselves. I mean, we have a whole minute left.
We're going to sing the agenda tonight.
Now, you know what?
You are going to sing.
That would be something completely different.
Because that's what's driving us crazy.
What are you going to say about Putin? So what are you going to say sing about Putin?
No, 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 I'm just talking about
The
that
Ukraine
buzz.
ordinance?
That buzz that's in the
Resolution?
lights or whatever it is.
Yeah.
We hear.
Oh, I hear you. All right,
Okay, and
I'm organized.
25 seconds.
Lonnie's here.
Broke my eyes.
We can start now, Dave's here.
Get the back of my big head.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'd like to call to order the March meeting of the Lafayette City Council. Please rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, can I have a roll call, please?
Clinker,
Here.
Nargi. Here. Snyder,
Present.
Reynolds, Weiss,
Here?
Allersmeyer.
Here.
Williamson.
Here.
Downing.
Here.
Brown. Quorum
Here.
present. Quorum present.
The chair will entertain a motion to recess for public hearings.
I make a motion, we recess for public hearing.
Is there a
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We are recessed for public hearing.
Ordinance 2022-01, an ordinance reestablishing the cumulative capital development fund.
Any questions or comments from the council? Any questions or comments from the public on ordinance 2022-01?
Ordinance 2022-05, an ordinance for additional appropriation of American Rescue Plan Grant Fund number 1760.
Any comments from the council? Comments from the public? There being none,
Ordinance 2022-06, an ordinance for appropriation of reduction of general fund, Fund Number 1010, and for additional appropriation of general fund Number 1010.
any comments from the public? Being none, we'll accept a motion to reconvene.
I move we reconvene the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Approval of the minutes. Take a motion.
I move approval of the minutes.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Next, presentation and proposal of claims.
There are none.
Presentation of petitions and communications.
There are none.
Reports of city offices on file at the city clerk's office.
Fleet maintenance, monthly January. Waterworks Department, monthly January. Renewed Department, monthly January, and the 2021 annual report.
These reports are on file in the city clerk's office. I implore you, if you want to know how we spending your money, go take a look at these. We move to ordinances for second reading.
Ordinance 2022-01, an ordinance for reestablishing the cumulative capital development fund.
I move for passage of ordinance 2022-1 on second reading.
Second.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the council, you know this is second reading for this to reestablish the cum cap rate. We didn't do that for many, many years, and then brought it back up in line with our assessed valuation, and so now we're not going to wait so many years in between to do this. So every few years, we'll be bringing this to you to reestablish that rate. So we would appreciate your support for this ordinance.
Any questions from council? Are there any questions from the public on ordinance 2022-01? Madam Clerk?
Clinker.
Aye.
Nargi. Aye. Snyder.
Aye.
Weiss.
Aye.
Allersmeyer.
Aye.
Williamson.
Aye.
Downing.
2022-02.
An ordinance to amend ordinance 2021-54, an ordinance fixing the salaries of the sworn protective occupation and law enforcement members of the police and fire departments for the year 2022.
Mr. Clinker?
I move we hear ordinance 2022-02 on second reading.
Second.
Moved in second.
I'll speak to that. So this is second reading on an ordinance to amend the poll salary ordinance for 2022 to correct a Scrivener's error that resulted in an incomplete listing of the police department specialty fields compensation. It doesn't change the overall budget or cost. It just is including the listings that were not listed in the original exhibit.
Any questions from the council? Any question from the public? There being none,
Clinker?
Aye.
Nargi?
Aye.
Snyder?
Aye.
Weiss?
Aye.
Allersmeyer?
Aye.
Williamson?
Aye.
Downing?
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-0.
on to ordinance 2022-03.
An ordinance to amend the ordinance 2021-53, an ordinance fixing the salaries of the appointed officers and employees of the city of Lafayette, Indiana for year 2022, excluding the sworn protective occupation and law enforcement members of the police and fire departments.
What is the pleasure of the council?
I move for passage of ordinance 2022-3.
Second. Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the council. Again, this is second reading on an ordinance that we talked about last month. As you know, Jackie is going to be coming into City Hall and being here full-time. We've talked about the many advantages that we believe that brings to the city of Lafayette, having our legal counsel in-house like that. It has been the butt of many hourly billing jokes since we announced it. But we think it's a great move. We're thrilled to have her as our city attorney. We think having her in here working every day, 8 hours a day and more is good for the city. She'll be working at a rate that's established in here, same as the city engineer and the controller, and she'll be working for that fee. So we plan on bugging her a lot over there at her office.
Yeah, I'm pretty
So-
sure there's a notepad on everyone's desk just waiting for tomorrow to come.
Tomorrow to get here.
Today, as far as I know, she doesn't really start till tomorrow, so she's free today.
Yes. It also changes one custodial position. We raised the classification. We feel we have a custodial position that we need to raise the level of their pay for the work that they're doing. So this also begins to allow that to happen within that ordinance. So we would appreciate your support.
None of this affects the net.
Nope, just moving it around.
Any other questions from council? Any questions from the public on ordinance 2022-03? Madam Clerk?
Clinker?
Aye.
Nargi?
Aye.
Snyder?
Aye.
Weiss?
Aye.
Allersmeyer?
Aye.
Williamson?
Aye.
Downing?
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-0.
On to ordinance 2022-05.
An ordinance for additional appropriation of the American Rescue Plan Grant Fund number 1760.
What's the pleasure?
I hear that, or I move that we hear and approve ordinance 2022-05.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Mr. Mayor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the council, as you know, this is second reading for the funds associated that we received from the ARP. And this is going to go towards the plan that we put together. As you remember, last month, we gave a full presentation from Steve Moore, our superintendent of water, discussing all the water infrastructure plans that we will be using this money. Also in your plan, you'll see that there are some IT uses that we'll also be using this money for. All these uses meet with all the legal requirements for the ARP funds, and we feel it is a good use. This is the first $8 million installment of those funds, and so we're bringing it to you for your consideration for that second reading, and we're going to get started on some of those right away. It won't be too long till people start to see a new water tower going up in South Lafayette. So we'd appreciate your support. Steve Moore is here. If you want part of his presentation, again, I don't know that that's necessary, but I want you to know that he is here in case you need any additional information.
Any questions from the council?
thank Mr. Moore for his presentation last month. I think he was very thorough.
Any question from the public on ordinance 2022-05? There being none, Madam Clerk?
Clinker?
Aye.
Nargi?
Aye.
Snyder?
Aye.
Weiss?
Aye.
Allersmeyer?
Aye.
Williamson?
Aye.
Downing?
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-0.
On to ordinance 2022-06.
An ordinance for appropriation reduction of the general fund, Fund number 1010, and for additional appropriation of general fund, Fund number 1010.
I move for approval of ordinance number 2022-06 on second reading.
Mr. Clinker?
Second.
Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of council. Jeremy Deal, Controller. As the mayor mentioned, tomorrow our city attorney will become a employee and cease to provide legal services on a contract basis. Because our 22 budget was constructed with all of our legal services presumed to come on a contract basis, we now need to transfer budgeted amounts to new accounts that are designed to support her legal department. So this is simply a transfer to create budgets in new accounts, no net change to the budget, and request your approval to do so.
Any questions from the council? Are there any questions from the public on ordinance 2022-06? There being none, Madam Clerk?
Clinker?
Thank you, sir.
Aye.
Nargi?
Aye.
Snyder?
Aye.
Weiss?
Aye.
Allersmeyer?
Aye.
Williamson?
Aye.
Downing?
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. On to ordinances for first reading.
Ordinance 2022-04, an ordinance to amend sections of the Title 12 Historic Preservation and Protection.
Mr. Clinker?
I move we hear ordinance 2022, on 2022-04 on first reading.
Second.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. John Collier from Economic Development. You have an ordinance before you to amend sections of Title 12 of the Historic Preservation and Protection. We're simply making some changes to the language to provide a little more flexibility. The first change includes changing the word shall to should for specific to qualifications for certain professionals that we have on the commission. So it will basically allow us to try to find folks who are an architect or contractor or other disciplines that are professional requirement or have been in the past requirements, if we are able to do so. So we want to try to reduce some of the restrictions and the requirements, but give us the greatest flexibility we can to find quality commissioners when we have vacancies. The second part of that change in the language is giving our residents in the city of Lafayette another option for designating their properties as local historic districts. It's in a phased process that allows them to designate for the first 3 years as a conservation district, which has fewer limitations or requirements for bringing things to the commission for review and approval. The only things that require review and approval for the first 3 years would be if they were demolishing the structures on the property, making some kind of an addition to the property, structural addition to the house or building, or moving it, picking it up and moving it somewhere else. Those are the only 3 things that would have to come before the commission for review in this conservation district status. They would remain in conservation district status for 3 years, and at that point, then they either automatically become a local historic district with all the other requirements then that they would have to come before the commission for review and approval, or if the majority of the folks in that district, and the district could be a property of one, just like our local historic districts are, if they decide 180 days prior to or no fewer than 60 days before that 3 years runs out, they can request in writing that they stay as a conservation district and not be elevated to a local historic district, then they have that option as well. So it's just another way to provide a level of protection for historic properties in the city without having to go through the full local historic district designation at the outset. So The Historic Preservation Commission reviewed and recommended approval of this at their February meeting, and we respectfully request your approval as well on first reading. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. If they go to the conservation district and after 3 years want to stay in that, is that permanent, or every 3 years they have to say, we still want to be that?
I believe, and Jackie, you can help me here, I believe that that would then make it for 3 more years, right?
I believe so. I'd have to go back and verify the state enabling legislation, but that would make sense that you would have to continue to do it every 3 years because it is built in as a
Years,
phase-in
and
period.
at some point in time, now, at some point in time, you want out of it. You just,
I think like the local historic district, there is a way to get out of it. It's not easy.
okay.
And it would require, again, the majority, and the commission would have to approve that. And so it's possible, I think, but there would be some steps they'd have to go through to try to do that.
Okay, and once again, this could be one property or a
Could be one
whole-
property or a whole grouping of
Whole
properties.
grouping of properties, okay, okay.
Any other questions from the council? Any question from the public? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Clinker?
Aye.
Nargi?
Aye.
Snyder?
Aye.
Weiss?
Aye.
Allersmeyer?
Aye.
Williamson?
Aye.
Downing?
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-0.
Ordinance 2022-07.
An ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance of Tippecanoe County, Indiana, to rezone certain real estate from GB to I-3, 600 Elston Road, Jet Void LLC petitioner.
I move we hear ordinance 2022-07.
Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, and away we go.
Thank you. Kevin Riley, attorney with Riley, Teeter, and Schreier, representing the petitioner. Tonight, we're asking the council to approve a rezone of property on 600 Elston Road from GB to I-3. We've also filed a commitment with the petition. The reason that we're asking for the rezone is that there are some acreage restrictions in the ordinance for the 2 particular uses that are being planned. It's a 2-acre restriction. So as a result, we can't proceed with GB, which is the current zoning. We have to amend or to rezone to I-3. Some of you may recall that a similar petition was before this council a year or so ago. It was denied at that point. And I think denied in part or in large part because our side, we didn't come to the city first and tell them what our plan was and really provide a good explanation of what we intended to do. So we have corrected that this time. We've met with the mayor, with Jackie, with Cindy, a couple of times to make sure that we were clear about what our plans are going forward. There's an existing structure on the property. It's going to remain. It's leased to a company that runs an airport shuttle service to O'Hare and also to sporting events for Purdue Athletics. This use has been on site for 8 years, and there's no plans for that to change. We also then, for the acreage behind that use, plan to develop or install a RV and boat storage, an outdoor RV and boat storage facility. It will be entirely fenced in. There will be no new structures or buildings with that. There will be no additional lighting, so overhead lighting to cause issues with the neighbors. And we don't anticipate an increase or a significant increase in traffic associated with this particular use. We do think that I-3 is appropriate for this area. There are some I-3 zones in the area. The R1 property to the east is surrounded by I-3 and general business. The R3 to the west is bordered in places by I-3. So this isn't spot zoning. There is other I-3 in the area. I'm not sure what documents you have in front of you, but there are a couple of charts floating around that might be a bit confusing. So hopefully I can help clarify that.
Kevin, I gave them all the newest commitment that
Okay.
was Jackie sent over this morning, so they all have that.
Great.
And it's online as well.
Thank
so.
you. So the first document is a document that area plan staff put together, and it was a list of uses that were still permitted in I-3 despite the commitment that we filed. And frankly, that's probably what some of the concern from area plan was last month. after the area plan meeting, we sat down, looked at that list, and decided that there were 9 uses on that 2 pages of permitted, or of uses that area plan prepared that were not allowed in general business, which is the current zoning. So we decided to add those 9 uses as prohibited uses to our commitment. So as we look at it, the list that area plan prepared, from our analysis, all of those uses are permitted in GB with the exception of those 9, which we've now added as prohibited uses. So did that in an attempt to help satisfy or address some of the concern. So we think that this is an appropriate rezone for the site, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Yes,
That will also follow the property.
it will. The commitment?
The
Yes,
commitments.
it is recorded and follows the property.
And so the prohibited uses, you've taken all those out that were I3. And so basically, the uses of this property will be just general business descriptions.
That, they would be uses that are also permitted in general business.
General business.
Yes.
So taking these prohibiting these, it really makes it a general business.
Essentially, yeah, we were
Essentially, for
trying
uses,
to
yeah.
take out the uses that, frankly, we thought we'd kind of address the most intense uses with our first
Right,
effort, but
right, okay.
in an attempt to try to make it more palatable, we decided to include those 9 as well, which were not permitted in general business.
So the use of the property after the rezoning will basically be the same what you could use it before the rezoning.
Yes,
Okay.
that's our opinion.
Okay.
Just to clarify, and Kevin, and that's with the exception of the use that they are intending of putting
Right.
in,
Right.
right.
I'm sorry.
right, Yes, yeah, so it would
Yes.
basically be general business
That's
plus
one
this
thing.
one limited
Okay.
use of what they are proposing to do
Okay.
with the property, just for clarification.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any more questions from the council?
That would not be a high volume of traffic because you're basically going to be using it as a storage area as opposed to an in and out.
Right, I mean, it's not like a restaurant, I mean, people will be bringing in a boat or an RV to
Shuttle
drop it off, and
Right.
pick it up, but that's,
Far less than the shuttle service.
yes, yeah, that's what we anticipate.
Right.
No tailgating.
No tailgating. No.
You also indicated there's a buffer and a berm.
Yeah, there are buffer yards on the side yards, so the east and the west side, we'll need to install buffer yards. On the back, the south side, or excuse me, the north side, there is going to be a berm constructed. So there's a large detention area that's going to go back there for drainage purposes. There will be a 3-foot berm with some deciduous trees planted in there. So that is the plan.
Any other questions from the council?
Chair, I want to make a quick comment.
Please, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the council, I typically don't speak on rezonings very often, but I do want to speak on this, and they've done everything that I've asked them to do, and I really think it got just messed up the first go-around, to be quite honest with you. So I feel like this is a good use of that property. There are way other uses in general business that could generate a lot more traffic than this is going to do. And with the berms, I feel the petitioner has done everything that we've asked him to possibly do, and there's got to be some use of the land. I know everybody might just like it to sit there vacant forever, but, you know, people have the right to use their land, and I think this is a good use of that. So I would appreciate the council's support on this rezoning request.
Yes, sir. I was about to ask for comments from the public, sir.
Good evening, council. Nice to see you all. This is my first time at a city council meeting. I'm very impressed, number one, by the professionality of it.
Sir, please state your name and address.
Yes, my name is Kelly Scott Osherman. My address is 550 Elston Road. It is the property direct east of said property that is up for rezoning. Where do I start? I'm going to briefly give you a Reader's Digest version of my travels to Indiana. At 40 years old, I decided that my family, first of all, I grew up in Baltimore City. When I got married in 1990, my wife and I started a family in the suburbs of Baltimore County. When our oldest daughter started high school, there was an incident that caused me to double think where I was raising my family. My wife's older sister, Mary Schulte, who previously has passed away since then, but in 2016, she told us that she could no longer, her and her husband could no longer maintain the property there on Elston Road. So I went out on a limb. Of course, it was right before the financial bust of 2008. I actually had two mortgages, one in Maryland and one here in Indiana. That's how strongly we felt we needed to get out of a metropolitan area. So it's a perfect opportunity for us to move our kids out here and just to raise our family. And Indiana has been very good to us. Both of my daughters are college graduates, one at Purdue and one at IU, unfortunately. But in any event, this has been my pride since 2016. This is my home. If you look at an aerial view of my property, you'll see to the direct east of me is a small house and then a machine shop, industrial zoned area already. First of all, I think we all know if we've driven down Elston Road that within the last 2 years, traffic has gotten really, really out of hand. Number one, the roads are not adequately wide enough for all the truck traffic, pedestrians. I actually witnessed a young woman struck by a minivan on her bicycle. She was riding in the correct direction for riding a bicycle. And then just this morning on my way out to work, it was about 7:30, I noticed there was two young mothers pushing cribs or bassinets, whatever you call them, and they actually had plastic draped around the baby to protect it from the rain. And, I could go on and on. Again, the environmental dangers there's a cemetery right behind me. I have a well. There's just too many things that would want to keep me there if this just grew any larger. So that's my Reader's Digest of my move to Indiana. Again, I'd like to just stress again how, I just feel like it's just too much at one time there on Elston Road. A couple of years, maybe it could be revisited once the infrastructure is a little bit built up, if that's possible within a budget within the future. But at this point, again, I've already got one industrial site right next to me. There's trucks unloading right on Elston Road for that business, a steel business, machining shop. There's children walking up and down the road. On the weekends, you've got motorcycles that speed down there. There's no restriction for speed limit. That stretch right in front of my house, past the petitioner's property. That's where they turn it on. They get past that stop sign on Romney going west, and they turn it on. I mean, anyone in that stretch of road knows what I'm talking about. I have security cameras, and I'd be more than happy to pull up some of the traffic that I see during the weekends, weekend nights. It's just dangerous, and that aspect of the infrastructure not being up to par for another industrial usage site, I don't understand it, I don't agree with it, and I actually feel like I'm being squeezed out between the two industrial zones if that happens. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other comments from the public? No comments from the council?
That site is serviced by city water and sewer, correct?
Right out to the edge of it.
Is that what the business will be, I think that's what it said, the business will be using, city water and sewer?
I'm Dan Gillis, I'm the owner. Right now, so I inherited it from my father. So right now, it's just a well with a septic system. And the engineer, if this gets approved, then we're going to tie into it.
Tie into the city?
We would like to tie into the city and sewer and water as well.
And you don't foresee having large amounts of waste or anything, you're not,
Yeah, it's basically essentially a gravel parking lot for race car use. Any additional waste or water or anything like that, not proposed.
what about what's the extended period of time that you can store a vehicle there?
I don't have any experience with it.
Okay.
My first experience was when I grew up here and I went to military for 27 years, came back. So my experience was I have a 35-foot fifth wheel trailer, and there was no place to put it. I lived in Colorado before that, and you could it was a month-to-month lease.
Right.
You didn't sign like an extended lease. So I guess I haven't looked that far ahead into it. This is kind of like the first step into that.
There aren't
So.
many other facilities that offer this kind of
There was
service.
so good transition. But when I first contacted places, it was a several month wait to even get in. So there was no place to put it. So
I don't know about other people in the council, but I know I frequently get calls from neighbors because people are storing them on the streets and in their
Exactly.
driveways because there's no place to.
and then
store
with
them.
COVID, no one was traveling, so they were buying RVs. So they, just like anything else, the price was going way up because everyone
Right.
wanted them, and then the HOAs don't allow you to park them in your, driveway or along the street. So, and that when I first looked into it was before the COVID stuff, so I can imagine it's probably even worse now. So, and when I inherited the property, I hired a company to do an assessment what the best use of the property was, and this is what they came up with. So that's kind of how I came up with it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
to address this gentleman's concern, I think at current usage that's there right now, there could be businesses that could go in there at current
Yeah,
rating that would actually be higher volume
in general
than
business.
than
yeah.
this would be, right?
Oh, and absolutely in a general business zone.
So-
Yeah, but
so
just stay
in-
general business.
And with the exceptions that they're going to be following this property, you would not foresee any huge industrial business going in there
Because of the commitment. they
because of the
No,
commitment.
because we've got the commitments now. Everything's locked in and it travels with the property.
So,
And I don't disagree with the gentleman that, it'd be nice to have sidewalks out there.
Exactly.
We fought against the apartment complex that was put in. And then we also fought when they put it into please, with all the subsidies you're getting from the federal government, put some sidewalks in down the road so people have a further way, but, they refused to do that, just put in the minimum that they had to do. So, someday we may try to put in some additional sidewalks. I feel like they should have done that. And, but I think this is probably the least amount of traffic use. It probably gives you the least amount of traffic you can possibly get for somebody using that, because people are going to pull them in and they're going to park them. And then they might come back and get them when they go camping on the weekend or boating. But then during the winter, people don't really camp and boat that much at all. So I think this is probably actually one of the least traffic generating uses that you could get for using that property. I'm not dismissing this gentleman's, because you're the guy with the music studio, right? That I met with, so on the Long Center, so certainly not dismissing what he said, but I think this is a good use for that piece of property and better than a lot of things that could go in there would
and
be.
somewhat of a protection against
Yeah, because
something
now it
worse.
travels with the property forever.
because it
Right.
travels with the property.
Right, right.
So do you think in the future we would consider working on sidewalks, roads?
Would, but I'm not, I don't tell you guys or anybody else
Right.
stories. It's not at the top of the list. So there's lots of other places currently in the city that have way more volume of traffic than that road has that don't have sidewalks. So, yeah, I'm not going to sit there and tell you it's at the top of the list because it's
Okay.
not.
Thank you for the clarification, Mayor.
Yep.
Just briefly, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Again, I just don't think that, I feel like I'm being squeezed out.
Okay.
As a any homeowner could probably appreciate, you've got basically junkyard on one side, and now I'm going to have a storage facility on the other. I feel like I'm being squeezed. Thank you.
I'm sorry, sir. Are there any other comments from the public? Last call, question from the council?
That property, the other I-3 property was there when you purchased the house, correct? Okay.
Madam Clerk?
Clinker,
Aye.
Nargi,
Aye.
Snyder,
Aye.
Weiss,
Aye.
Allersmeyer.
Aye.
Williamson.
Aye.
Downing.
Aye.
Ordinance passes 7-0.
Moving on to resolutions.
Resolution 2022-03, a resolution approving the transfer appropriations within the Water Utility Operation Fund and Water Pollution Control Operating Fund.
I move for passage of resolution number 2022-3.
Second.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, council. Similar to the ordinance you addressed a short while ago concerning transfer of budget within the general fund, this is a resolution for your approval to do the same within the water and renew operating funds. Legal services are commonly used by the utilities, and so both water and renew will bear a portion of the total legal department budget. As with the general fund, this resolution confirms council's approval to transfer budgeted amounts for outside legal services to accounts that will now fund our internal legal department. This entails a transfer of approximately $35,922 per operating fund. And this has been presented to the Board of Works and approved by the Board of Works, who approves the utility budgets. So this resolution is for you to confirm that.
Any questions from the council on resolution 2022-03? Are there any questions from the public on resolution 2022-03? There being none, Madam Clerk?
Clinker,
Aye.
Nargi.
Aye.
Snyder,
Aye.
Weiss,
Aye.
Allersmeyer.
Aye.
Williamson.
Aye.
Downing.
Aye.
Resolution passes 7-0.
On to resolution 2022, I'm pushing it, -04.
A resolution of the Common Council of the City of Lafayette amending Resolution 2021-33, approving an amended and restated lease between the Lafayette Redevelopment Authority and the Lafayette Redevelopment Commission, authorizing the Lafayette Redevelopment Commission, authorizing the issuance of bonds by the Lafayette Redevelopment Authority and other matters related thereto, Consolidated Creasy Central Economic Development Area Project.
I move for passage of resolution number 2022-03 on first read.
Four. Yeah.
Yeah, excuse me.
So 4.
I just followed our president, 2022-04.
I will second resolution 2022-04 hearing.
Yes, sir.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of council, the city's always looking for ways to save money. An existing debt issuance, the 2014 lease rental revenue bonds, have been identified as a prospect for advanced refunding that will ultimately save the city significant interest costs. This resolution presents for your approval necessary amendments to the lease agreement between the Redevelopment Authority and Redevelopment Commission and other matters required to pursue this advanced refunding. I have Scott Frisell from bond counsel firm Krieg DeVault, as well as municipal advisor Baker Tilly Representative Greg Balsano, and these gentlemen can give a summary of this refunding effort and its expected outcomes. We'll start with Mr. Frisell. Yes.
Good evening, council. My name is Scott Frisell. And before you this evening is the amending resolution relating to the advanced refunding of the Lafayette Redevelopment Authority's lease rental bonds of 2014. Those bonds were issued on December 23rd, 2014 in the amount of $16.16 million. As you may recall from late last year, this council adopted resolution number 2021-33 to approve the advanced refunding and authorize the issuance of certain refunding bonds in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $16.1 million to effect the advanced refunding and defeasance of the 2014 bonds. Based on existing market rates at that time, there was a projected substantial savings and reduction of interest costs to the city and the authority. Resolution 2021-33 anticipated that the refunding bonds would be issued on a taxable basis, with a taxable interest rate due to the fact that the 2014 bonds were not callable until August 1st, 2023. That means that a tax-exempt advance refunding is not available until that time. So we'd have to wait until at least May 3rd, 2023 to do a tax-exempt refunding. However, there's an option to do a taxable and / tax-exempt refunding at this time through a convertible bond structure. So following the approval of the refunding bonds, Baker Tilly solicited proposals for the sale of the refunding bonds. They received a couple different proposals. One of the proposals was a convertible bond structure that had a taxable and tax-exempt interest rate. That proposal was received from Capital One Public Funding, LLC. So under Capital One's proposal, the authority will issue its advanced refunding bonds with a taxable rate of 3.35%. And then on May 3rd, 2023, the authority will have the option to convert those bonds to a tax-exempt rate of 2.55%. That option will remain outstanding until November 1st, 2024. Thus, in order to receive the full benefit under Capital One's proposal, the authority will need to maintain the right to have the option to convert the bonds in May of 2023. So based on Capital One's proposal, we have revised the trust indenture to incorporate the convertible bond structure so that upon the authority's satisfaction of certain conditions laid out in section 4.10 of the indenture, the authority will have the option to convert the bonds to the tax-exempt rate of 2.55%. Some of the conditions in the trust indenture include providing notice. The bondholder will have the right to exercise one of two optional redemption provisions, which helps us satisfy the Internal Revenue Code requirements to cause a substantial modification to the trust indenture, which will cause a reissuance at the tax-exempt rate. We'll do appropriate amendments to the trust indenture and the bonds at that time as well, issue a tax certificate outlining the tax-exempt nature of the bonds, issue IRS tax forms, and issue a tax opinion. So once those conditions are satisfied, we will be able to issue the bonds in a tax-exempt rate of 2.55%. So based on this information, the resolution before you today approves certain amendments to resolution number 2021-33 in order to maintain the authority's ability to convert the bonds to a tax-exempt interest rate if certain conditions are satisfied in May of 2023, and reapproves the trust indenture as presented. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and Greg Balsano is also here from Baker Tilly to address any of the financial aspects.
I heard you say based on conditions, so as the Fed signals higher rates, if it's a higher rate, we obviously would not do that, nor would they probably be popular to be purchased on the market, right?
The rates are actually locked, assuming we
Okay,
close by
good.
April 8th this year.
Okay.
So that 2.55% would be locked.
Okay.
The conditions.
Good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg Balsano from Baker Tilly. You here to make a presentation of our expected savings?
Absolutely. Thanks, Jeremy. Good evening, council members. My name is Greg Balsano with Baker Tilly Municipal Advisors. I'm going to hand out a brief couple-page summary of just the estimated savings that are proposed by the refunding that we are discussing today, and I'll just go over those very briefly.
Sure. Want me to pass them down? You got it? Oops, I'm sorry. They're fine. I was going to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we get to the good part.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Looks like my mortgage payment.
Again, good evening, council members. So on the first page here, you're going to see that we have the existing amortization schedule for those 2014 lease rental bonds that were mentioned. These are the bonds that we are looking at refunding. And you can see that this is the outstanding amount. Currently, those bonds are outstanding an amount of $14,650,000. So as of today, those are the outstanding principal amount of that bond issuance. And this first page just kind of goes through the outstanding amortization schedule.
Yes.
You can see that that interest rate ranges anywhere from 3% up to 3.75% as it stands currently. The second page kind of goes through the estimated sources and uses of this proposed financing. And one of the benefits that was offered by the potential purchaser here is that they are allowing the elimination of the debt service reserve fund. The debt service reserve fund is a fund that's held for the life of the bond issue. Back in 2014, that was established just to maintain in case their TIF revenues were ever insufficient. And that's a fund that just has to be maintained and held over the life of the bond. With the bank not requiring that fund to be held, that is money you're able to apply towards the refunding and thus reduce the amount that's needed to be borrowed. So you'll see on this schedule that $1,344,000 estimate, that is that fund being used to be able to be applied towards the refunding and thus reduce your borrowing amount and help savings. So the last schedule here just kind of gives you a brief look at the estimated savings potential that this refunding would generate. As was mentioned, we would be looking at a taxable rate of 3.35% in the initial until that everything was satisfied and we were able to call these bonds on that May date and switch this over to tax exempt, and you'll see that switch over to the 2.55%. Assuming everything is met and that is able to be satisfied, you can see an estimated look at your savings here. And on the bottom right, you can see a net present value benefit of just under $460,000 to the city because of the lowered interest rate and the elimination of that debt service reserve fund. That is about equivalent from about 3.1 to 3.3% of the savings is of the outstanding principal amount of the current bond issue. So saving about 3.1 to 3.3% from the potential bond issue here. So again, with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and I appreciate your time.
So that's a net savings
Yes, ma'am, that is a
after
net.
expense?
Correct. Yep, that's net after all the expenses. You can see just there up above, the annual gross savings before expenses, before anything like that, is about $125,000 to $130,000 annually, totaling that little over $2.2 million. That's the gross before the expenses. But you're correct. Yep, the net present value after the expenses is about just under $460,000. Yep, that's the estimate.
Including all the expenses of redoing the bonds, right? Is that what you said?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep, that includes an estimate for cost of issuance for doing these bonds here that we would anticipate closing in the beginning of April.
And we're borrowing a less amount of money because we used the 1 point.
Yes, Mayor. Yes, Mayor. Yep, you're only estimated to borrow, let's see here, so you're estimated to borrow about $14 million, a little over $14 million, as you'll see on that second page. And if you remember, I mentioned on the beginning page that this bond is actually outstanding in $14,650,000 because we were able to use that reserve to help fund other items and help bring down that borrowing amount.
Fantastic. Thank you for your help.
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
Nicely done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the public? No further questions from the council? Madam Clerk?
Clinker?
Aye.
Nargi?
Aye.
Snyder?
Aye.
Weiss?
Aye.
Allersmeyer?
Aye.
Williamson?
Aye.
Downing?
Aye.
Resolution passes 7-0.
On to Resolution 2022-05.
A resolution to transfer appropriations between major budget classifications.
Move for passage of resolution number 2022-05.
Mr. Downey?
Second.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the council, you have before you a resolution. You haven't seen one like this in a while. We've done some several years ago, but as we went through our procedures, we decided to do this again, as was asked earlier. This doesn't change the totals. It doesn't change the overall budget. It puts everything in the right line and the right amounts from transfers throughout the year. And to make sure that as we go into our audit and everything, it's exactly where we want it to be. So, like I said, didn't spend any extra money. We didn't do anything like that, but we did make some transfers during the year. And so this gets those in the right lines to close out our book. So we'd appreciate your support on that. Jeremy's here if you have any additional questions. And if it's about the price of gas, a good thing the council approved the hedge fund earlier in the year.
Amen.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the public? There being none?
Clinker?
Aye.
Nargi?
Aye.
Snyder?
Aye.
Weiss? Allersmeyer?
Aye.
Williamson?
Aye.
Downing?
Aye.
Resolution passes 7-0.
On to Resolution 2022-06.
A resolution to opt back into the opioid settlement pursuant to Indiana Code 4-6-15-2.
I move for passage of ordinance number 2022-06.
Second.
All right, very good. As the council will recall, in July of 2021, we came here and we passed a resolution to opt out of Indiana Code 4-6-15, which has to do with settlements of the various opioid litigation that many government entities across the state of Indiana have been involved in. During the 2021 legislative session, the state adopted legislation to be a master control of all of those settlements that had some provisions that didn't necessarily, after due consideration, the council did not think were in the best interest of the city, so we chose to opt out of that legislation at that time. During the 2022 legislative session, those concerns were addressed by the state legislature and resolved in a way that all the different government entities across the state of Indiana that are involved felt good about. One of the biggest changes is how the funds are going to be distributed, both between the state and the local governmental entities. The revised statute provides that the funds will be distributed not through the FSSA, but is based on empirical impact formula set forth in the various settlement agreements. So right now, the city is estimated there are 2 pending settlements. There are others that are down the road, but the city is estimated to receive between these 2 current ones a total of about $2.4 million to be paid over a period of 18 years. There are more details that will be forthcoming, but the first step for us to be able to access that is to opt back into the statute. So I'm asking for your approval of that resolution today.
Any questions from the council? Are there any questions from the public on Resolution 2022-06? Being none?
Clinker?
Aye.
Nargi?
Aye.
Snyder?
Aye.
Weiss?
Aye.
Allersmeyer?
Aye.
Williamson?
Aye.
Downing?
Aye.
Resolution passes 7-0.
On to reports from standing committees. Reports of special committees. Reports by the mayor.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the council, we have a proclamation tonight in support of Ukraine. Thank you. We contacted everybody before we did this. It's certainly something I felt strongly about and appreciate everyone on the council responding that they supported it and signed it. Jerry is not here tonight, but Jerry supported it over email, and we'll get his signature when he gets back. So certainly a very difficult situation, but one that I think deserves our support for those people over there fighting for their homeland from a tyrant that invaded their country. And so the proclamation is as followed. Whereas Ukraine has been a sovereign and independent state since the collapse of the former Soviet Union, and whereas the United States and the Ukraine share common values, including freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. And whereas at the direction of President Vladimir Putin, Russian forces have invaded Ukraine in a violation of international law. And whereas it's been over a week since this invasion and the death toll is mounting for civilians, including children. And whereas we condemn this violence and threats to innocent civilians in Ukraine, and whereas everyone in Lafayette should find ways to show the support for our Ukrainian friends and neighbors in Lafayette and those in Ukraine who are courageously and valiantly fighting to save their homeland. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the city of Lafayette stands in solidarity with our Ukrainian neighbors in the United States and abroad, and the city of Lafayette sends thoughts and prayers that Ukraine will remain a sovereign nation and peace will come to their country. signed this the 7th day of March, 2022. So again, thank you for everybody on the council signing this, and it's just a small gesture, but I think in this day and age, it's an important gesture, and hopefully this will end well for freedom and democracy throughout this world. So thank you.
Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Miscellaneous and new business. I guess we have a council appointment to Fire Merit Commission for a 4-year term for John Hank.
I move John Hank be added to another 4-year term.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? He's gone for 4 years. Reports of councilmen. Being none. Now we're at the point where we will allow public comment. You get to talk for 3 minutes. We ask that you be respectful to one another, be respectful to the council. Step right up.
Lloyd Wells, 3717 Rawlings Drive. I couldn't be more in line with what the mayor was saying about his resolution or proclamation, I'm sorry. But is there any way that those lights on Sagamore Parkway can be configured to signify that?
We can't turn them yellow, because when we turn them yellow, it confuses people with the yellow stoplights. That's why they can't be green and red.
Well, I understand that.
They can be blue, though,
But I
right?
just,
They're blue, but turn them yellow messes people up if they're looking at the lights, that turning red, green, and yellow, so because of this.
Wish we could.
yeah, well, I just thought maybe there was a way to utilize those lights.
Yeah, I
to-
appreciate that. I'm just a little hesitant, but thank you.
When
Any
they
other
turn
public
yellow,
comment?
then that'll be the yellow for before.
We've been talking all evening. Don't be scared.
Yeah.
There being none,
Move for adjournment, Mr. President.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right now.
Thank you.
That was smooth. Yeah, that was smooth, Carrie.
I don't understand that. Well, that's because nobody showed up in a chicken suit.
The bones are getting older, Stevie.